Hello. Hi, we got Isla and Nemi here. Hi, Isla.
Oh wait,
Hi.
Sorry, Kyle. I think you might. There you go. You're back. You're glitching. There you go.
Hey.
Back. Hi. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around for this. This is the third and final one of our. That's my dog in the background. Shifting around. You all right, George? Do you need some more attention? This is our third and final talk back / Q&A for Represent. We had our first one on the environmental issues that are raised in the play. We had Greenpeace and Ethical Consumer come and join us for that. Our second one was on corporate philanthropy with Laura Solomons. And we're delighted to have the playwright with us here, Isla and Nemi. I'll just do a really quick introduction myself. I'm Guy, the creative director of Represent, and I directed the show. Nemi, can you give a brief introduction to yourself?
I am Nemide May, and I play Kaia in Money. Isla.
My name's Isla van Tricht and I wrote Money.
There we go, nice and concise, thanks. So I thought might be interesting to give the title of this session is Creating a Play for Zoom. I should say, by the way, that please feel free. Some of the questions are coming in already in the chat. If you just open the chat at the bottom, feel free to post questions at any time through on there, and I'll get to those after we have just a brief discussion. So please feel free to post whatever questions you may have. We'll try and get through them all. So a couple of years ago, we had a meeting with an arts organisation, and they were telling us about a donation they had received from a company that was involved in a scandal. And they had to decide whether to take the money. They called their board, they called the entire, actually, I think they had 2 or 3 boards that they called, and they discussed whether they should accept it and basically had to vote on it, and they voted to turn down this money. It was quite a few £1 million. And from that point onwards, we thought the idea for Money was born. We thought it was an amazing idea. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall in that meeting, and we thought there was real potential for it. So as a company, last year, when our inaugural season was interrupted by COVID, of course, we did a virtual R&D on the idea with the cast and with Isla, always with the intention of it being an in-person play. And then we started talking about actually there's potential for this to be virtual. So my first question really, if it's all right to go to Isla, how did you find the process of writing a play specifically for Zoom as a format, as a stage?
In some ways it was really fun, actually. Like it was a bit of a challenge, but it was also quite fun thinking about what ways in which Zoom as like a platform, as a performance space, could be experienced differently by the audience than sitting in a theatre, like particularly a traditional theatre space. What was it about the stage that Zoom presented that could be unique and could be more interesting, or offer us things that we couldn't necessarily, offer us kind of magic or audience experiences that wouldn't necessarily have happened if we were just in a theatre with people in their seats. And so it was thinking about not just what are the kind of things we associate with Zoom, like the jokes, like people being on mute, or like what someone's name or their background tells us about them, but also ways in which things like breakout rooms and polling and how that could be used that would be different from how we'd experience it if we were just sitting and watching it on a stage. And I think I was thinking a lot about liveness. We're really missing liveness, and a lot of the stuff that we've seen has been sometimes live performances, sometimes pre-recorded performances, but it's been that they're streamed, and that as the audience you could sit or walk away from your laptop and nothing changes. You don't have any impact on what happens in front of you. And so I wanted to find ways in which, even in like a small way, there could be an interactive element so that the audience felt like they had some impact on it. I mean, literally the audience every night has the impact on what the ending is. There's 3 different endings, one for tie, one for yes, and one for no. But also choosing what stories you overhear, going into different breakout rooms, and how that would affect the way that you might vote, or what you might hear, that's different from someone who's watching it in their bedroom or their living room in another place. I quite like that idea of giving people that a bit more unique or live interactive experience.
We've actually got a question here from Michael which relates quite closely, and you've kind of answered it, but I want to ask it anyway and see if you've got some more details there. If this were performed on the stage, would you lose a sense of the enigmatic layers that come from only being able to see fragments or part of the whole in the breakout rooms?
I think it depends. There's been some talk about, maybe there's a version of this that exists live, but we haven't yet talked about what that would look like if it does end up being live. And there's obviously an argument for it not necessarily being in a traditional stage space, so not necessarily being, in a in people in seats sitting in any kind of theatre, whether that's black box or proscenium or whatever. It might be more interesting if it's in an office block, and actually in the breakout rooms you follow so and so to the water cooler, or maybe this is a bit weird and I haven't thought this through, but so and so to the toilet, or whatever. Like, maybe there's ways that we find that kind of breakout room experience in a more literal kind of promenade or immersive experience. Maybe it will be limited to the number of people that would fit in a boardroom. Maybe it will be, so I think there's lots of different versions of it that could be possible that could still bring that sense of following certain characters, making allegiances with certain characters, overhearing things. And I think there's a way we could do that in a live performance as well.
So I guess the message here is watch this space. Nemi, I'd like to come to you now, if that's all right, and just ask what it's been like as a performer, rehearsing and performing this over Zoom.
It's been interesting. It's been very different. Zoom, sitting down and doing it in front of a computer every day is draining in a different kind of way. And also it's kind of like the mediums are mixed up, because obviously it's like theatre, but it's in front of a camera and it's live, so it's TV as well. So kind of like finding the balance of that as well has been interesting to work with. I think it's a really cool concept, and like I haven't actually seen anything like this before, and I think we pull it off. I think
you smash it.
Oh, why, thank you. But yeah, I think it's been interesting, and I think actually it's been a good way to reintroduce people back into live performance when June 21st comes. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and leads very nicely to my next question, and kind of follow through on that is, obviously, this year, longer than a year, has been awful across the world, and also in our industry, in our sector, in the performing arts sector, it's been decimated. And the fallout of COVID on venues and companies is, we haven't seen yet how bad it still yet could be. But trying to be positive, I'd love to hear from you both. What, if any, are the positives that we might have learned working in this way that we could take forward when we do get back into a space safely?
Nemi, do you want to go first?
No, you go first. I'll go second.
Busted. I think it seems to me that theatres would be silly to not consider continuing digital work alongside live work, because I think there is something magical, there is something inescapably special about being in a room with other people and sharing a live theatrical experience. But there's also something that is limiting about that. There's a limited number of seats, you're limited by location, by accessibility, sometimes by all sorts of things, whereas actually oftentimes digital performances can be more accessible in a number of different ways simply by being digital, for a lot of those different things. And also it can be a lot more affordable. You could buy potentially one ticket for one link to see a show and sit with your whole family and watch it together. So I think financially it can be more accessible, and in lots of other ways I think that can be really good. But also I think what this year has taught us potentially, or could usefully have taught us as creatives, and hopefully theatres as well, and gatekeepers at theatres will have looked at the potential of digital work to explore different avenues and be more imaginative in the way that we think about theatre and think about storytelling and think about that experience. And I think it's just another medium, like we think about, you know, other non-traditional forms of theatre, like maybe promenade or immersive theatre, any of that kind of stuff. You know, digital, why can't digital just be that, another form of that, rather than just thinking of it as a poor alternative to live theatre, being like, what are the ways that we can do stuff digitally that is better or as good as the live thing, but just different, a different thing. That's kind of what I think.
I agree. I think as we probably after Corona, we've moved slightly forward digitally, like people are going to be working from home more, blah, blah, blah. And I think that you're right. I guess it's kind of created like an alternative type of theatre in a way, which again is accessible and can be really useful. And I think so. My eldest son, they had a play at their school, and it was on a projector, right? And I thought it was going to be in person, because obviously that's what I was used to, but it's like in person, it's on the screen. And I think that that's a really cool way of kind of like getting people to watch things that they wouldn't necessarily watch, and engage in art and creative ideas that they wouldn't necessarily be exposed to or have the money to be exposed to. Yeah, but it's just, I think it's different, because there's something magical about live theatre that you don't get with Zoom with theatre online, interactive theatre. But I think it's a cool new way of doing things and telling a story. Yeah,
I think it's the other thing about with Represent and what we stand for, why we were formed. Represent was formed to redress the socioeconomic imbalance in the arts. You know, it's become more widely publicised that, you know, drama schools have ridiculous audition fees. You just, even to audition before you even get in to those schools, before you have to pay the massive fees to attend. And you get, you know, generally programming is programmed by, for, and starring a very privileged elite. So Represent was really formed to kind of break that cycle and try to make the whole landscape more equitable. And actually, you know, this show has been watched across the world, which is amazing. We have people see it from Singapore, from South Africa, from the States, which is remarkable, that we wouldn't have had before. Not all our cast are from London. That's another big problem in the industry, that London centrism, and we were able to transcend that, which is really positive. And I think, like you say, the potential for hybrid events in future, and what comes with that in terms of accessibility. You know, every performance is a relaxed performance. If you have, if you're neurodiverse, then, you know, this kind of performance can be really suitable. And I think there is a lot of potential here. So the questions are flooding in, which is great, and please do keep them coming at any time. I wanted to, there's a couple of questions kind of about the endings, specifically in the vote. Well, Bernie, first of all, the vote was not rigged. Bernie assumes the vote was rigged. I can assure you, Bernie, it wasn't. Tonight was our fourth tie.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
different every time. How
do you, as an actor, Nemi, how do you do what's going through your mind when people are voting? That's all live, Bernie, it all happens. Jordan's asked whether the graphic of them not taking the money is a bunch of orangutans dancing. Nemi, how do you, in that moment, how are you readying yourself to do one?
I think it's actually really cool, because you, as an actor doing a run of a show, the work after the first week, let's say, the work is actually keeping the show alive and, you know, making it seem spontaneous and new. And so I think having the interactive bits and choosing which way it can go, it helps us as an actor kind of keep it fresh and kind of sparky. And we always, like, every time we do a show, we always guess what people are going to vote for. And we really thought there were going to be a lot more take the monies, which actually have been the least, or like I think it's been the least voted for, which is really interesting. But it's, yeah, it kind of lends itself to, for us as actors, like being able to just kind of go with whatever happens on the day. You know what I mean?
Feels really organic and genuine when you respond to it.
Yeah.
Isla, we've a couple of questions here about kind of the immersive nature of the production. I suppose interactive might be a more accurate term. One of the questions is, have we thought of making it more immersive? From our early conversations, the answer is yes, but Isla, can you tell us more about that and what that process was of us discussing the audience participation elements, whether they could be involved more? Can you talk us through how we reached this version of it?
Yeah, sure. And if I forget things, then you fill in, because obviously that was a conversation that happened between us early on. So we were thinking about, would it be appropriate in the breakout rooms to have the audience be able to unmute themselves, to be able to argue it out between them, or to discuss things with the characters, or whether that would be a separate section, or whether we would encourage them to write things in the chat, or whether or not they would actually be able to unmute themselves or ask questions or do things in the main meeting the whole time. And essentially, Guy, you can tell me if this is incorrect or not, but basically, because we had a really short turnaround time for this, a short time for me to write it, a short time to rehearse it and get it on and going, I think we basically thought the simpler the better, because realistically, if we wanted to do something that was that broadly interactive, where audiences could chat, and it requires a huge amount of the actors in terms of improv and getting things back on track and guiding things around, and we would therefore have needed a huge number of previews and even shows before that with privately people coming in to kind of test that a lot. And I think essentially we didn't really have enough time, but there's a possibility that a future iteration of that does throw things over a bit more to the audience and allow, more time and space. It's just always a risky business, handing things over to an audience, and it requires a lot. All of our casts are perfectly capable of handling it, but it does require a lot of a cast to improvise around that, to keep things on track. It becomes half their job then becomes kind of crowd management as well as performance. And I think with the time that we had and the resources that we had and everything, it felt like it was best to limit that in this version of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we spoke to a games designer. Actually, we consulted with a games designer on the audience interaction elements, and he was really helpful. And his main note was, for audience to be involved, basically in like a player in a game, they need to be very clear on what the rules are and on what element of engagement they can have. So as soon as the idea of like, we go into breakout rooms and the audience can then kind of ask the actors questions and give their own opinions, it just felt flabby. Not everyone would want to speak. There might be some people who really don't want to speak and others who speak too much. And we kind of increasingly just felt like of the script that was very taut and we thought was very real. And we were putting the audience as kind of voyeurs, but also in a kind of boal, like forum theatre sense. They're sort of spect actors as well. They're supposed to watch and vote and engage in that sense and choose their own narrative that they want to see by going into different breakout rooms. That, I think, to us felt like the best form of audience interaction that wouldn't kind of slow down the narrative too much and would kind of keep it ticking. Because otherwise I think the potential was it would just become too much. It would just become overkill. And Nemi, did you want to add anything to that? How would you have, what do you think? How would you have found that talking to the audience?
I think talking to the audience would have been okay, but an element of this that maybe people don't realize happens is that we as actors are also doing like technical things, and if we aren't that great at doing things technically, that's also another thing that needs to be managed on top of, managing a crowd and like improvising and so yeah, it would just take a lot of work, and even like setting up, having a laptop, the ring light, a microphone, there's so many things that probably an audience doesn't think has happened in terms of prep, but has. And that would require, having the audience, us interacting with the audience, will require a lot more of like technical support for us, which in such a short amount of time, I don't know how possible that would have been.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? There are so many elements to this, like, but you know, Zoom is not built for this. Zoom as a platform is not built for this, and we've done our best to kind of lean into it. And we talked about it being a play, not a play made for Zoom, but a play made by Zoom. But yeah, it would certainly add a lot of.
Can I indulgently ask a follow-up question of something that Nemi said about the backgrounds and how you worked, Guy, with the actors on all of their backgrounds?
Yeah, so it really depended on the characters. I mean, like for instance, Aaron, who plays Glenn, like that sort of was his background, right? That sort of was like his, and we were like, wow, that's so perfect. I think he found that painting, which was to us was very like lines and rigid, and you know, yet colourful, and you know, he loves music. He resorts to music, so that very kind of ordered, given the childhood that he had, that was very sort of chaotic. That his need to impress order was very clear. And I just think that's an easy one to talk about. And then Nemi, I'll ask you about like with Kaia and how you came to yours. But what was exciting was, you know, on stage you've got, certainly on our budget, you've got one set, not West End, you know, things flying up and out and everywhere. We've got one set. On this we had 5, and that was really exciting. So working with the actors on kind of what is it that would tell a very clear, quick story about your character. What can we do to use that? Yeah, what about you, Nemi? How did you come to this moon backdrop?
Well, it was really good, I think, as an actor to be able to kind of create your own little world, because it helps with like character development and, you know, discovering who you are and what your environment is and stuff like that. And the moon, her brand is called Earthside. So she's very like into not just like being ethical and sustainability, but also, you know, like being grounded and connected with the universe and stuff, and which is actually quite similar-ish to me as a person. And so I just had already been perusing the web and had seen this, and I thought that would be perfect for Kaia, so I read it up, and here it is. And it explains a lot about her, I think, on like a kind of different level, if you know what I mean. Well, it does for me anyway. Helps me connect.
The work she's done on herself, right?
Yeah.
Centering and seasonal like change. Yeah, it does seem to tell a story. We had as well at the back of Avery's set, he wanted a Pan-African flag, which was, yeah, so how it developed was totally collaborative. And that was really exciting to work on, and yeah, they all kind of became their own designers. I've got a really interesting question here from Carrie, which I'll just throw out there because what a challenge this is, I think. But how can digital theatre compete with other televised programming? How does it retain its theatre essence so as to be a different offering? Ooh.
Say that again.
Yeah, let's go. So how can digital theatre compete with other televised programming? How can digital theatre compete with other? Okay. How does it retain its theatre essence so as to be a different offering? Who wants to have a crack at that?
I think the difference is that this is live every night. It's the same show that you see every night. Obviously, we have the interactive element, so that can switch it up. However, or you can go and see whichever breakout room you want, but essentially it's the same thing that we've prepped for every night. You know, we go through the different endings every single day before the show to make sure we like remember what they are. And I think that's the difference. Whereas, you know, even as acting as a television for an actor, you know, you prepare for the scene, you do it once, you do a couple of takes, and then it's done. You don't have to remember it again. So I think that's what's really cool and really different about this, is just that it's live, and it's cool knowing you as an audience member are watching someone doing something at exactly that time. And you know, the thing for theatre that's really cool is that you know, because it's live, there's always something that could possibly go wrong. It's always like a bit spicy because you don't know. And that's what's great about theatre. And you get that through this kind of medium that you don't get through watching Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say, I think the liveness is a massive thing. And I think also what we tried to do a bit with this, but I think what digital theatre could do even more is like, how does the audience have an impact on what happens? Because the thing about a theatre that's different to a cinema is if the audience leaves, then I would imagine that the actors probably stop performing. Whereas if the whole audience of a cinema leaves, the film keeps playing, right? If there's a TV set in a living room and everyone walks out, the TV show still keeps playing. The audience has no impact on the performance or anything that's happening. There's no reliance on the audience. And I think finding a way of putting that into the digital space is what can make digital theatre competitive, or just not even competitive, but yeah, like a different thing from just watching Netflix. Because yeah, I can watch Netflix, I can be on my phone, I can like, you know, walk out, I can turn it off at any moment. But if there's a live performance that requires something of me, whether that's like really interactive in terms of speaking, or whether that's like kind of what we did in terms of choosing a little bit where you go, or voting and changing the ending, something that means that it's live and that the audience has some impact on what's happening. So it feels like, you know, there's something about theatre that's like, it's important that you're there as the audience. You give something to the actors in the same way that they're giving something to you, that I don't think happens with TV and film in the same way. And that's, I think, what needs to be captured in some way with digital theatre in order for it to be useful and different.
I'm going to try and put two questions together, which I think follow on nicely, kind of about that. And thank you for that question, Carrie, because it is fascinating. In fact, Black Mirror, I think that's what, yeah, tried to do something with Bandersnatch. I don't know if anyone saw that, which was I don't think fully successful, but it was you were watching it and you could choose what happened next. It's on Netflix, I think it's still there. And you could kind of choose what happened next. So there is that kind of overlap. It seems like more TV are thinking about trying to do those things. I mean, the games industry in general is worth more than film and music combined, or something mad like that. So I think theatres and TV are starting to think about how they can integrate that kind of level of audience choice a bit more. Jordan's asked whether there was an ending that we wanted from the members. If there was some, I'll get the exact wording, was there an ending that you as producer and writer hoped to evoke from the voting members? Isla, did you have a way that you were trying to push the audience, and how did you kind of lead that?
I was trying to push everyone in different directions, if that makes sense. As in, if someone was coming in with a set idea, I wanted that to be challenged, whichever way that went. So if someone came in and there was like, there is no way I am taking this money if it has anything to do with the environment or whatever, then I wanted to push them and challenge that and be like, well, what if this happens? Or what if this? And actually, have you thought, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And likewise, the other way around, if someone comes in and there's like, there's nothing that's going to convince me not to take this money. Of course you take the money. Of course you know, accept the donation. It doesn't matter where it came from. Then I also wanted to push them. And I wanted to push people who were in between to kind of bounce around. So, I mean, I don't think I had a desired outcome one way or the other. My desired outcome was that it would be a difficult decision for every person who watched it, or at least a not a completely easy one, that people would have to weigh things up, that they might change their mind, they might not, but that they wouldn't necessarily leave the show feeling comfortable, I think was something that I really wanted. I wanted there to be a sense of discomfort whichever way it went, because that's the whole point. It's a tricky issue. I mean, I think when we were in the first few days of rehearsals, I think we were worried that it would predominantly, Nemi, I think you said earlier, we were kind of worried that it would predominantly be yes, that everyone would just take the money because I think amongst us, that's kind of how it went, or whatever. So it's been nice seeing that actually it's been different every single night, that there have been ties. I mean, I didn't think there'd be ties at all. I wrote the ending for a tie just in case, and there's been like 5 or something. And every time people message me and they're like, that's rigged, right? That, like, you know, the same thing that someone said earlier on the questions, people don't believe that there would legitimately be a tie. And every time it happens, we're like, what? Like, how has this happened again? But yeah, so my only desire with the audience was just to challenge everyone of every standpoint and try and push people around a little bit in terms of challenging them to question what their default might be and to consider other options, and for it to be a difficult decision for anyone watching it.
Nemi, how have you bonded with the cast, or not, as a team, when you haven't been able to rehearse or perform in the same room? I think this is a great question. How have you managed that, like trying to find a connection with whoever you're performing with on Zoom? Have you had to, and also without any audience feedback as well?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, I would say. It's kind of weird because obviously we're just coming out of COVID. Well, we're just coming out of like lockdown, COVID, haven't really been around that many people. So it's kind of been a good easing into it, I would say. Because we did kind of know each other from before. So coming into this, we did have that. We had a little bit of like prior knowledge as to who we were and blah, 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 blah. But what we found is that we couldn't just be in rehearsals and just like come to rehearsals and then come out of rehearsal. We actually had to have some time every day to like bond as a cast. So for example, when we started the shows, we figured out very quickly that because we didn't have each other to kind of physically to create the energy that you would have behind the scenes before you go on stage, and we also don't have like the energy of the audience to interact with. We had to create that ourselves. So we created a green room, and we'd all like kind of go in there an hour before and chat just about our days and do warm-ups and like bond as a team. And I think we realized that pretty quickly early on in when we started the shows. And I think since we did that, we've managed to kind of like create a really good bond actually between us all. And it's helped with like the energy and the flow of the show. Because I think maybe people don't realize how important it is to have an audience there for us as actors, and you know, like giving us that kind of like adrenaline rush before we go on to like help us feel what we need to feel and be in the moment and stuff. It's quite difficult to be at home. Like you can see this backdrop, but I can see, you know, like my stuff, like my kids' toys on the floor and stuff, which can easily just take you out of it. So yeah, I think a massive thing is that we found that actually as actors and people, we have to connect. And how are we going to do that outside of rehearsal space and outside of the show?
Yeah, it was the other piece of context that I possibly should have given was that these characters were written by Isla specifically for these actors, which is an unbelievable privilege on our part to have had that experience. And we worked quite a lot on improvisation, and it was really, really important to us that it felt real, that it felt like when you logged on, you were genuinely watching a meeting, you know, at the expense possibly of early, quick drama. We wanted it to be real at the start, and that means a slow build, you know, that means all of those things that come with it. And like Nemi says, you know, all you have is this, but you have to build the world around it. I mean, even when Avery gets up and walks to the back of his room, I think that's kind of reminding us, like, actually on the other side of the door is the rest of the world. And kind of bringing the outside in and the inside out was something that we worked really hard on. And it was also as well, I think something that the cast have done really, really well is approaching this like a piece of music in a sense, because they can't, it's not so much about image, you know, the images you can create by like blocking on stage. So much more of it is about how they speak and how they confront. Their interruptions are so natural. I hope you agree. The way that they've performed in those scenes, you really just, they found the peaks and troughs and the rises and falls in the speech that are there, and the pacing and stuff. And that was such a focus of it as well, was just finding it like a piece of music and how it should all flow, you know, scene by scene. He's knackered, and it's 25 past. We do just have one last question that I thought might be nice, from Jordan. Would you have taken the money or not?
What, personally?
Yeah.
I think I would have taken the money. I would have, because I think, that us not taking the money is gonna have, it's like such a small impact compared to the impact that the money would have in the community. And I think obviously there are things that we as individuals can do to help with, you know, all the issues with the environment and deforestation and stuff like that. But I think actually like a massive part of it is companies that have to take responsibility within themselves. Obviously, I had to do a lot of research for this, and for palm oil, there are things in place for sustainable palm oil, but a lot of big companies say that they're using those practices, but they're not. They are not at all. And so I think, you know, in the grand scheme of it, £1 million will make more of an effect, have more of an effect on the ground with this charity, with these people, helping them out, than £1 million would do in general for an issue like deforestation. Yeah. Sorry, Kaia.
Shameful. Not kidding. Isla, what would you do?
It's really hard, because I think initially I would have said exactly the same as you, Nemi. I think, and still part of me feels like were I in that position, were I on that board, were I so invested in Nyoni, like, yeah, maybe I would take the money. But it's so hard because, like you said, in the process of researching this play and in a Q&A that we did last week with Greenpeace and the Ethical Consumer, I was like, the impact of palm oil is so bad, and it is just a really, really hard decision. I think, I mean, oh gosh, I don't know. I think probably I would take the money. If I was in the position of a trustee for Nyoni, I think I would probably vote to take the money, but I'd feel really bad about it. I'd feel very bad about it. And I think as a result, I would
stop buying things with palm oil in.
Huh?
Stop buying things with palm oil in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, like, I went through the cupboards the other day and was looking at stuff. I was like, right, I'm not buying that brand of peanut butter anymore because that's got palm oil in it. And like looking at cleaning products and stuff, I've just become so much more aware of it, and I think that's useful. But yeah, it's hard. I think probably, I'm going to stop talking. I think probably I would take the money, but I feel really bad about it, and I'd feel like I needed to do other things in order to like redress the balance for like taking that dirty money, basically.
What about you, Guy?
I'd probably avoid all responsibility and just resign there and then.
No, you have to give an answer. You can't get out of it. You have to give an answer.
Yeah, I would take the money. It's interesting, like going into this, we all voted. We all kind of, when we did the first read through, we voted at different points and sort of mapped how our opinions changed. And you know, the disclosure that Flo makes in Breakout Room 1 is a really horrible thing. For those who didn't see it, Flo discloses that the head of the foundation was very inappropriate with her, and that's pretty horrible. And that in a sense, this is more about me, you know, it would probably affect my opinion more than the environmental issues around it, because I just do feel like those issues are just existing, and sadly I don't know what turning down £1 million a local charity would do to affect that, but I would probably take it. Yeah, I'd probably take it. Difficult, very difficult, and a great play on the issue. So, well, it's past. We've been chatting for 40 minutes. So I want to say firstly, massive thanks to Isla and Nemi for, Nemi's just done a 2-show day. She has 3 children and she's done this with us. So thanks so much, both of you. And Eid Mubarak, Nemi. And
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for joining. Please do go on our website and join our mailing list, and follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, and all that jazz, and watch this space, because we do have 2 shows coming at the end of the year with the same cast, with this repertory company, and lots more exciting projects in the future. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.